Hello and welcome to the Introduction to MEX. Here at MEX, we pride ourselves on producing maintenance management software that is easy to use even for people that have relatively limited experience with maintenance management systems. And while keeping it simple, we've included enough functionality and flexibility to make the system effective in achieving your maintenance outcomes. And finally, MEX is a very cost-effective package to implement, not just in terms of licensing costs, but in terms of time taken to implement the software, including configuration and user training. We will start our presentation by looking at some of the main modules of MEX: the Asset Register, Work Orders and History, and Preventative Maintenance. We will start with the Asset Register. The Asset Register, in its most basic form, is a list of the assets that you are responsible for maintaining. Once an asset has been defined in the system, the various maintenance tasks that you perform against that asset can be recorded as work orders. When a work order has been physically completed, it is closed off, so that the work order moves from the maintenance backlog to the asset's history. I access the MEX Asset Register by clicking on the Assets icon in the MEX main menu. In the Asset Register, I can see that all of my maintainable assets are listed out on the left-hand side of the screen in a hierarchical fashion. I can drill down through this hierarchy to locate the individual asset that I wish to look at. There's no limit to the depth or width of this hierarchy. When I select an asset, I can see all of the information that relates to the asset on the right-hand side of the screen. For example, I have the Details tab, which shows the physical details of the asset, the Work Orders tab, which shows the maintenance backlog that exists for that asset, the Preventative Maintenance tab, which shows the routine maintenance associated with it, and the History tab, which will show me the maintenance history of the asset. There are a range of other tabs, including parts lists, drawings, movements, fuel usage, and so on, but most of the time you'll be concentrating on those four tabs. When I look at the details of a MEX asset, which I can access by selecting the asset and clicking on the Details icon at the bottom of the screen, I can see that I have a wide range of fields that I can use to record information about the asset. For example, I can record serial numbers and barcode numbers on the Extended tab. If I'm maintaining a vehicle, I have a tab that contains vehicle-specific information. I can record warranty and depreciation. And if I don't have a field that I wish to use, I also have an unlimited number of user-defined fields that can be added to each type of asset. Even though there are a large number of fields that can be used, the majority of the useful information is contained on the Details tab. Here I have things such as the asset type, which indicates what category the asset belongs to. For example, this is a tank. The manufacturer, the model number if I have one, the account code, which is a cost center that any expenditure recorded against the asset will accrue to, and a range of other fields. If I populate this tab, then I will get 90% of the functionality in MEX. I can exit the details by clicking on the red X in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Once I have an asset defined in the system, then I can begin to create work orders and maintenance schedules for that asset. We will now have a look at work orders. The work order is the most basic record in a maintenance system. It represents a maintenance task that is to be performed on an asset. For example, one of my forklifts might need to have its tyres replaced. I would add this job into my maintenance backlog by creating a work order. In the work order, you would include such information as the asset being worked on, a description of the job, the type and priority of the job, the labour and materials requirements for the job, the actual and estimated costs, and the date that the job is scheduled for. When the work has been completed, the work order is closed off, meaning that it is moved from your backlog of outstanding work to the work history of the asset. The work order listing is accessed from the MEX main menu, here. This listing contains all of the open work orders in your system, which is effectively your current maintenance backlog. In this listing we can create new work orders, print or email them, close them off to history, or a number of other functions. Work orders can arrive in this listing in a number of ways. They can be automatically generated by your routine maintenance schedules, They can be created as a result of an approved maintenance request, or they can be manually created, as we are about to do now. The first step in manually creating a work order is to click on the New button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. This will open up a blank work order details screen for me to enter my new job into. The only mandatory fields for a new work order are the asset that is to be worked on and a description of the work that is to be performed, although typically I would specify a bit more detail than this. This time I'm going to replace the tyres on one of my forklifts, so I'll select the asset. This time I'll use the Asset Search tool. And describe the job. Now that is enough to save my work order, but I'll say a few more things. I'll give the job a priority of 3, a job type, which is the category of work of corrective maintenance, and I'll schedule it to start, we'll say next Friday. If I wish, I can also apply resources to the work order. Now I think this job will take a fitter about 2 hours to complete, so I'll go to the Trades tab and specify that. I'll use a trade code of fitter and an estimated duration of 2 hours. If I wish to apply the job to a specific fitter, then I can select it from the available list of fitters. I might also need a trades assistant for half an hour to help with the lifting, so I'll add a new line and I'll need him for about half an hour. I'm also going to add the materials requirements to the work order, which I do in the Spares tab here. Now I've got a number of options when I add materials to the work order. I can select items from the catalogue using this button here. I'll need a few bearings, these ones, and I estimate that I'll need 4 of them. When I close the job off, I'll issue these parts so they'll become an actual consumed quantity rather than an estimate. I also need a pair of forklift tyres. Now I don't hold them on the shelf, so I'll create a purchase order for my supplier to bring them into the job. I'll click on Add Purchase Order, select my supplier, and then add the items that I wish to purchase for the job. Again, I have a drop down. I can type in the supplier stock number, or I can use a catalogue selection screen, and these are the items that I purchased from that supplier. I'll have these ones today. And I'll need 2. Because I'm purchasing directly to the job, the tyres have been added to the work order as an estimate cost, and I have a hyperlink to the purchase order that they've been ordered on. When the goods are received from the supplier, it will go from being an estimated cost to an actual cost, and when the supplier's invoice arrives, it may update the cost of those tyres. I can do a great deal more on the work order. I can add documents on the Documents tab to put things like permits or safe work practices onto it. I can perform a risk analysis on the job, or a range of other features. But this is enough for this job, so I'll close it and return to the work order listing, where I see that my work order has been added to my maintenance backlog. Now at some point the job will be complete, and it will be up to me to close the work order off, moving it from the maintenance backlog to the assets history. The way that I do this is I select the work order in the listing and click on the Close Work Order button at the bottom of the screen. Now what I record on a closed work order will depend on what kind of reporting I want to produce after the fact, so what I'll do is put down the details that most of our customers would typically record. I'll say what actually happened on the job in the history description. and I'll put the actual duration that my tradesman spent on the job. So Greg Rich spent an hour and a half on that. David Higgins spent 3/4 of an hour. And I also used another trades assistant for half an hour. I'll also issue the materials that were used. When I created the work order, I added the bearings on as an estimated quantity. Now that I'm closing it off, I'll issue them, taking the bearings from the shelf and putting them onto the work order. I'll enter 4 into the issue column. I can also add additional parts to my job that weren't in the original estimation. I use 4 of these seals. Now the tyres that I purchased earlier were received from the supplier, and because they were received, they've already gone into the actual usage on the work order. When I receive the supplier's invoice later on, then the cost of the tyres could be updated as a result of the final invoice price. Now because I've added actual labour and actual materials to the job, this will have contributed to the actual cost of the job, which I can see here is less than I originally estimated it to be. When I close the history work order screen, I can see that the work order has dropped out of the work order listing and it is no longer part of my maintenance backlog. When I close the work order, it goes from the work order listing to the history listing, where I can see it here. I can still edit closed work orders, even though they're closed. I can add more parts or update any information I feel necessary. I can also lock this down so that it can only be done by an administrator. To supplement the MEX work order functionality, MEX also has a requests module. This allows people to request a maintenance activity. Once a request has been lodged in the system, the maintenance manager or other authorised person can elect to approve the request and then transfer it to a work order, adding it to the maintenance backlog. When the work order is completed, the request is also automatically completed. You can also enable a chain of email communications that will automatically notify the requester of the progress of his request. Optionally, requests can be lodged via MEX Ops, which is a web page that can be distributed to a large number of users with a minimal effort. Now we'll have a look at the Preventative Maintenance module. A preventative maintenance schedule is used whenever you have a routine task that you want the system to automatically produce work orders for. For example, I might have a number of stairwell fans that I'm required to service every 3 months. I would like MEX to automatically generate work orders for this service, so I'll create a preventative maintenance schedule which will create a work order for each stairwell fan every 3 months. If I'm required to also perform a more comprehensive service annually, I would create a second preventative maintenance schedule to produce work orders every 12 months. And if I use the preventative maintenance's hierarchy option, then the annual service will override the 3-monthly service, and when both work orders are due, only the annual work order will be produced. When I create a preventative maintenance schedule, I will typically specify the details of the work order to be produced, the frequency at which work orders will be created, and the assets that work orders will be created for. To access the MEX Preventative Maintenance module, I click on the Preventative Maintenance icon in the MEX main menu here. This will open up the Preventative Maintenance listing, which is a list of all the routine maintenance schedules that I currently have defined in the system. To create a new preventative maintenance, I click on the New button in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. This will open up a blank Preventative Maintenance detail screen for me to enter the details of my new PM into. Now when I define a new preventative maintenance schedule, I have to say 3 things. What it is, which is the description of the task that's to be performed. What it happens to, which is the assets that the preventative maintenance will generate work orders for, and how often it happens, which will be the frequency. In this case, I'm performing a 3-monthly inspection of my stairwell fans. So my description would be stairwell fan 3-monthly inspection. The next stage is to say what it will happen to. There are two ways of going about this. I can either manually nominate a list of assets in the Asset Using tab here, is where I can just specify what assets I want it to apply to. But what is more common is to specify a group of assets. If I select the asset type of stairwell fan up here, then MEX will locate each stairwell fan in my asset register and automatically associate them with this maintenance schedule. I can be more specific by specifying a manufacturer or model number, but in this case my one maintenance schedule will handle all models of stairwell fan, so I'll leave it at that. When I nominate what fans I'm going to include in my service, I also have to say when they were last serviced. It will default to today, but I would need to look at my records and say this stairwell fan was last serviced, we'll say on January the 27th, and this stairwell fan was serviced last week. I only have to do this on the creation of the maintenance schedule. As it begins to schedule work orders, these dates will be automatically updated. The last thing that I need to say is how often it happens, which will be back on the Details tab. In this case it's a 3-monthly service, so we'll enter a frequency of 3 months. I can schedule maintenance in two ways, by calendar, which is days, weeks, months or years, or by usage, which is hours or kilometres, or any other type of reading that indicates the usage of the asset. If I specify a usage-based, then I need to enter regular readings for my assets. For example, if I have a 250-hour service on my forklift, I would have to, on typically a weekly or fortnightly basis, enter an hour meter reading for that forklift, so that MEX can begin to schedule work orders. In conjunction with the frequency, I can also specify lead time. Now this is a 3-monthly service. I might like the work order to be generated, say, 5 days in advance of the actual due date of the job. I would say this in the lead time field. I've put 5 days in here, so if one of these work orders is due on, say, the 20th, it will be generated on the 15th with a due date of the 20th. Now this is enough for the preventative maintenance to begin scheduling work orders for my stairwell fans. From here on, I am adding the details that I would like to appear on the work orders that are generated by the preventative maintenance. We'll give them a priority of, we'll say 3, a job type of PM. My service has a checklist of tasks that I want performed during the service, so I'll add these tasks onto the Tasks tab. I complete a visual inspection. Check the belt tension. Give it a clean. And check and possibly replace my filters. The other things that I might do are specify the labour requirements. I think that would take a fitter, we'll say half an hour. Nominate any materials that might happen on the job. There you go, we'll have these. And possibly add documentation. If I add things like safe work practices or permits onto the preventative maintenance, those documents will propagate down to any work orders the preventative maintenance generates. That's typically what I would put in a basic preventative maintenance, so I'll close the screen and I'll see that my PM has been added to the listing. An interesting utility that's included with the preventative maintenance module is a scheduler. Using the scheduler, I can specify a date range, we'll say next calendar year, and it will tell me what jobs will be generated during that period. If I wish, I can display them on a calendar. As you can see here, this calendar can be printed. And I can also get a materials list for what spare parts and other materials I require for my routine maintenance during that period. Once the preventative maintenance schedules are in place, work orders will be automatically generated by the system. The next thing that we'll have a look at is the optional Stores module. The Stores module is the inventory system that can be purchased with MEX. It's a fairly comprehensive system that integrates seamlessly with the MEX maintenance functionality. The Stores module can maintain a store's catalogue, which is a list of the items that you either hold on your shelf or order in as required. When we look at the details of an individual item, we have a catalogue number and description, but we also have things like part categorizations, physical locations, and minimum reorder points. We can also record the suppliers the item is purchased from, any documentation associated with the item, like MSDSs. We have a complete transactional history of the item, and we can also see what machines the item is used on. With the catalogue listing also comes an automatic replenishment system, which can be used to replenish any stock that is fallen below its minimum stock level. Purchase orders for replenishment can be automatically generated from this screen. We can also generate purchase orders, receipt items from suppliers, process supplier invoices, and a range of other purchasing functionality. With purchase orders, you can also use an electronic authorization system, where a purchase order cannot be sent to a supplier until it has been approved by a person with appropriate financial authority. There are a range of other functions within the Stores module, such as materials reservations, a central requisitioning system, stock take, and stock transfer. The last thing that we'll look at is the MEX reporting functionality. In the MEX Reports menu, there are 213 standard reports and an additional 36 in the Stores menu. The reports work in a fairly simple way. You select the report, populate the parameters as necessary, and produce the report by previewing it or printing it. Reports can also be emailed or exported to a variety of file formats. Reports can also be scheduled to automatically email themselves to a distribution list on a defined schedule. MEX has an integrated report editing utility which can be used to create new reports or edit existing reports. In addition to the MEX Reports menu, MEX also comes with a MEX Dashboard, which is a business intelligence web page that displays KPIs. There are 99 KPIs available for display, of which a selection can be added to a Favorites tab. Each KPI displays real-time information in a series of easily understood charts, graphs, and lists that relate to your maintenance operation. In this presentation, we have covered the main areas used by our customer base. There is a wide range of additional functionality held within MEX, and we can be contacted to discuss anything that might be required to meet your business requirements.